Since the last time I did a sit down knitting chat, I've been able to complete most of the collar for my sweater, and today I'll be working on folding it in half to create a double knit neck. So, let's talk about the HBS and Wharton interview experiences I had. It's pretty well known that the HBS interview is run by admission committee members who have already read your application. So they ask you very targeted questions. It's a very quick 30 minutes. And there's generally two types of interviews: why you did what you did for every decision you ever made in your life, and industry knowledge, so a more technical interview. And because I came from a more non-traditional business background, I got the industry knowledge one. So they just grilled me. It was a pressure test the entire time. And afterwards, you do a post-interview reflection. And in my reflection, I first, thanked them for the opportunity, and then I gave them my thoughts and impressions of how it went and things that I would have answered differently. And the interview was really, really tough. They asked me questions like, what is one controversial trend in your industry? What is one skill that your industry lacks? And how should companies adapt? They also asked me, in your field, who innovates and where do they sit? And they asked me that question twice. So they didn't like my first answer, and I couldn't think of a new second answer. So I guess they just didn't like my answer. So I addressed that in my post interview reflection. And if you're curious about the rest of that experience and what I answered for those questions, I'll upload a video in the future kind of detailing my harrowing HBS interview experience and answering any questions that people generally have about it. And then, like I said, I was pretty scarred from the HBS interview experience. So, going into the Wharton interview, I had no expectations, and I was actually pleasantly surprised. The interview experience was pretty fun. At the beginning, when all the interviewees enter the waiting room, we're able to talk and chat and get to know each other. And because I didn't know anybody else applying to business school at the same time that I was, it was really refreshing to meet people and get to know them. They were all super nice and super smart and had really, really interesting work experience. So this was truly my first time interacting with my peers. And afterwards, after the interview, after our 5-minute presentation, as we got pulled in for the one on one interviews, we were still able to talk and catch up and talk about how the interview went, like what we thought, what questions we were asked in the one on ones, and what we were going to do for the rest of the day. So now that the interviews were done, the hardest part was yet to come, and that was waiting. Honestly, waiting for the decisions was the hardest part because there's nothing else you can do, and it's about a month or a month and a half of waiting. And during that time, I was just rehashing everything I said for the HBS interview and kind of just beating myself up about it. I would get like third person embarrassment in my own mind about what I said. And yeah, it was not really fun, but I did a lot of things to distract myself. We went to two weddings, we went to go see Hamilton, we went to, birthday parties and things like that. So when I applied to business school, I didn't know that HBS and Wharton's interview was different than the typical alumni interview. Quite frankly, I didn't get that far in my research. And also, since I only had a month to apply and I had no expectations, I figured we'd cross that bridge when we got there. And we got there. I found that HBS invites about 20% of the applicants to interview. And I'll put a table up on the screen that kind of compares the top programs, HBS, Stanford GSB, and Wharton, to show how many of their applicants they invite to interview and what the acceptance rate is post interview. And you'll see that for all the schools, the acceptance rate after the interview is about 50%. So it really is a coin toss once you get to the interview. That means getting to the interview is the hardest part. So that gave me a lot of encouragement. I was like, now I just have to beat out one other person to get admission. But yeah, so if you're curious to learn more about my journey and my story, I'll continue sharing videos on my experiences. And feel free to go back and watch my previous essay reveals or why and how I applied to HBS and Wharton in 1 month. So I'm pretty much done knitting this collar, and next I'll be knitting the yoke of the sweater, which is also pretty fun. So until next time, bye guys.